Hey everyone, and welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into a really fascinating journey. We are going to connect the ancient, naturally evolved heritage of biological life directly to some of the absolute most efficient industrial technology out there right now. It's an incredible story about how the fundamental, invisible laws of physical space have literally shaped life on Earth, and how today's modern engineers are finally tapping into those ancient blueprints to build a radically better, more efficient future. So right off the bat, what do zebra stripes, vibrating sand, and highly efficient fans have in common? I know, it sounds a bit like the setup to a joke, right? At first glance, they seem completely unrelated, but actually, there is a hidden, underlying physical force that unites every single one of these phenomena. A deeply rooted mathematical and physical reality perfectly ties the camouflage pattern on a wild animal to the way air flows through a modern machine. And we're going to unpack exactly how that works. Okay, let's look at our roadmap for today. First, nature's hidden geometric patterns. Next, the science of morphogenesis. Then, the universal logarithmic spiral, followed by biomimicry and efficient technology. And finally, expanding the human experience.
Section 1. Nature's hidden geometric patterns and the physics behind biological forms. We usually tend to think of biology and evolution purely in terms of genetics. But it turns out, physical forces actually serve as the foundational templates for life. Basically, Mother Nature was a physicist way before she was a biologist. Take animal skin coloration, for example. The distinct stripes on a zebra or the perfectly spaced spots on a leopard. If you compare those patterns to sand vibrating on a steel plate, it's pretty mind-blowing. See, when a steel plate vibrates at specific frequencies, the sand naturally gathers at the nodes of the vibration, creating these distinct geometric shapes. Why do these two totally different things look so incredibly similar? It's because the exact same periodicity, that harmonic resonance telling the sand where to gather into standing waves, is actually being exploited by biology to create evolutionary advantages like camouflage. What this means is that biology literally doesn't have to reinvent the wheel from scratch. Instead, these generic physical forces are acting as ready-made morphological templates. Evolution and genetic selection are actually just operating within the strict boundaries of these pre-existing geometric laws. Life is quite literally pouring itself into the physical molds that the universe already provided. Moving on to Section 2, the science of morphogenesis and how embryos build spatial structures. Let's zoom way down to the microscopic level. Here we find morphogenesis, which is just the development of spatial structure in an early embryo. Now, right after its initial cell divisions, an embryo is basically just a blank slate, an undifferentiated mass. But then something absolutely amazing kicks in. Using specific staining techniques, scientists can actually watch a periodic banded pattern emerge. And this pattern represents alternating concentrations of specific chemicals that permanently mark the underlying tissue. It's like an invisible blueprint identifying exactly which cells belong together as the organism develops. The secret mechanism driving this miraculous mapping is called reaction diffusion, and it is extraordinary. Reaction diffusion is basically a chemical harmonic resonance where continuous, looping reactions sustain physical patterns. It is the exact chemical equivalent of those standing waves we just talked about with the sand and the steel plate. It's the precise process that allows physical, complex form to suddenly emerge out of an entirely unshaped embryo. So let's walk through exactly how this reaction works. Think of it as a continuous, two-step chemical dance. In step 1, a chemical called morphogen P acts as a catalyst. It essentially triggers the production of even more of itself, more morphogen P, as well as a second chemical called morphogen S. Then step 2 immediately kicks in. That newly created morphogen S turns around and actually inhibits the production of morphogen P. This continuous pushing and pulling loop creates these perfectly sustained alternating patterns. It's literally a chemical harmonic resonance flawlessly mapping out where your bones, your muscles, and your internal organs are eventually going to go. Section 3. The universal logarithmic spiral and a shared shape across unrelated organisms. Okay, this is where the sheer scale of this geometric consistency gets staggering. We see the 3D logarithmic spiral everywhere. We see it in mollusk seashells. We see it in the spiraling shape of tidal-washed kelp fronds down in the ocean. We even see it under a microscope when looking at our very own human skin pores. Now, these organisms share absolutely zero genetic relationship that would dictate having this exact same structural feature. None. And yet they all utilize this identical morphological template. So why is this specific spiral everywhere? One word: efficiency. It is the universe's ultimate path of least resistance. This specific 3D shape creates a geometrically consistent flow form. Thanks to its physical properties, liquids and gases flow centripetally through these spiral forms with vastly less friction, making the whole process incredibly efficient. So whether it's a mollusk moving ocean water or your skin pore releasing water vapor, nature has universally adopted this underlying geometry for one simple reason. It just works perfectly. Section 4, Biomimicry and Efficient Technology, or Stealing Nature's Blueprints. And that perfectly tees up the core focus of our explainer, biomimicry. This is an approach to design that takes advantage of naturally evolved shapes and biological variations to develop brand new technology. Think about it for a second. Why on earth should human engineers spend decades and millions of dollars doing trial and error R&D when nature has already been running beta tests and perfecting these designs through millions of years of evolution? Biomimicry lets our designers completely bypass all that guesswork by just directly copying the underlying principles of nature's geometric successes. Our source material points to an absolutely killer real-world application of this. They note that examples of using the pattern found in snail shells include the fans, propellers, impellers, and aerators designed by Pax Scientific. By taking the exact 3D logarithmic spiral naturally found in a mollusk shell, these engineers were able to design industrial equipment that dramatically optimizes how gas and water flow across its surfaces. The resulting boost in efficiency is just phenomenal. The big takeaway here is that our modern industrial efficiency is deeply, deeply indebted to biological history. When you're standing there looking at a highly advanced, ultra-efficient industrial fan blade, you are quite literally looking at the technological descendant of a seashell. You're looking at a shape originally perfected by generic physical forces, harmonic resonance, and the chemical reactions of morphology, all seamlessly translated into human machinery. Finally, Section 5, Extending the Human Experience and Design as an Ontological Activity. Let's get just a little bit philosophical for a second and digest this profound quote from K. Palmer. Dasein reacts to what has being and produces something new, which extends and expands on what being covers. Now, Dasein is just a fancy philosophical term for human existence and our active engagement with the world around us. What Palmer is pointing out is that biomimicry isn't just passive copying, it's a highly active process. We are reacting to the fundamental realities of the universe. By creating something totally new out of these ancient shapes, the very act of design actively extends and expands the underlying structure of existence itself. Because ultimately, human design draws directly on the spatial and temporal relations of nature to create a brand new reality. The source material uses this brilliant metaphor of a surfboard designer. A surfboard designer invokes the precise link between spatial and temporal relations to completely master the energy of an ocean wave. Everyday biomimicry is doing the exact same thing. It's humanity actively interacting with the generic physical forces of the universe. And doing that validates our incredibly deep fundamental connection to the actual structure of reality. So as we wrap up, I want to leave you with this final provocative thought to chew on. How will the ancient geometries hiding right now in your very own backyard inspire the technologies of tomorrow? Seriously, we are constantly surrounded by an infinite library of unbuilt, highly efficient technology. It's just waiting to be noticed in the spots of a leopard, the spiral of a kelp frond, or the vibration of sand. So keep your eyes wide open out there, because the physical forces shaping nature today are the exact same blueprints that are going to build our future. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep exploring.